Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Travel Coach Network podcast. It is I, Sahara Rose Devore, the founder of the Travel Coach Network and then creator instructor of the Travel Coach Certification Program. Today, I have a special guest. I have Geneva. Geneva is a TCN certified travel and work abroad coach with over 7 years experience in international traveling, studying, and working. In her adventures to 49 countries, she discovered her passion for helping others achieve similar visions of gaining international work and travel experience. Geneva is now on a mission to help US-based 20-somethings explore the world through extended backpacking trips and work opportunities in places like Australia, New Zealand, Europe, and Asia. Through her coaching business, Unwrap Your Map, Geneva guides aspiring adventurers in turning travel goals into reality through practical planning and effective budgeting, leading to life-changing experiences abroad. Geneva, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm really excited to be having this chat with you.
I know, it's so nice having you, just because I feel like we've been friends forever because you've been in the network for a while. But before we dive into you being a travel coach, tell us, where did your love of travel even come from?
Yeah, so it's funny. I mean, I feel like I've had the interest for a very long time. Since I was a kid. I talked about traveling, and everybody said, what do you want to do when you grow up? And I just said, I just want to travel. And they said, well, that's not a job. What do you want to do? And I was like, no, that's what I want to do. I just want to travel. So the idea was definitely there from an early age. And I think a lot of it probably stemmed from my dad. He traveled a lot for work, and my mom and dad lived in Japan right before I was born. So, I always had this background in my head that my parents, had traveled and they lived in these places before I was born. And I was kind of like, well, how come I didn't get to do that? And growing up, my dad kept traveling for work, and I always said, one day I'm going to catch up to him. I'll go travel as many places as he's traveled. And I think it kind of, fell into the back of my mind for a little bit, but I always had the interest. And then eventually I was like, you know what, I can just do that. I can make that happen. And I'm still not caught up to him, but I'm working on it.
Do you know how many countries he's been?
Last I checked, I think he was at 68.
Ooh.
And it's all been for business. So it's a very different, he travels in an entirely different way than my travels. But it was always, from the time I was a kid, I was like, well, I'm going to go to as many places as he has, and maybe just in a very different way. But yeah,
that's really cool. That's really cool. And that's really cool that your parents were able to, travel together and stuff too. Have you been to Japan?
I have. I actually met him on a business trip when I was living in Cambodia.
Nice.
He was back in Japan for business because he still occasionally travels for work. And I met up with him over there, and he showed me where he and my mom used to live with my older brother when, before I was born. And, kind of showed me around to a few places around where they used to live and spend time. And so that was really cool.
That's so nice. Yeah, Japan's an amazing place. It's a place that I want to go back to. So what made you become a travel coach?
So I'd always had an interest in, obviously always had an interest in travel, but at some point I realized how many people were expressing interest to me in what I was doing and saying that they wanted to know how to do it as well. And I loved sharing information with them. I loved kind of helping them along their own journeys. And, I don't think I saw it as a job opportunity until later, when I was like, I know there's got to be a way to kind of like turn my passion for helping other people travel into a business, but I kind of didn't know what that might look like. And so, of course, when I kind of came across the Travel Coach Network, I was like, that's the name for what I'm trying to do. That's what I'm looking to achieve here. It's a perfect way to put a name to something that I already wanted to do. Because, it was something that almost came naturally just because of how many people would ask me about it anyway, and just wanted to know and wanted to, kind of learn a bit about my experience and how they could, accomplish some of the same goals that they had. So I would say that that's where a lot of it came from.
Yeah. And I know you also help people with the work aspect of working abroad. Can you just tell more about that, and what is it you help people with, and what kind of opportunities are there?
Yeah, so that's a good question. Actually, as you know, at least I've just returned from Spain. I just finished my master's program there, and it was a concentration on innovation and tourism marketing. And my final thesis was actually about work options available to young Americans internationally. And, and when I say Americans, I'm talking, North Americans, but particularly US citizens that have US passports. And there's a number of opportunities. There's about 10 working holiday visa programs or similar programs that are offered in Australia, New Zealand, Singapore, South Korea, Japan, Ireland. And so there's a number of different destinations that have these visas open to young Americans. And I'll be honest, it took me a long time to figure out what they all were. But I started out myself with New Zealand. I did a working holiday visa for a year, and then Australia. I did one for a year as well. And, different visas come with different work allowances. So some programs are tailored specifically to those who are interested in teaching English or working as an English teaching assistant in a classroom. But the New Zealand and Australia and Ireland ones, for example, are very flexible. You can do all kinds of work. So work retail, you can work as a barista, you can work, on a farm picking fruit. And then I worked in the Outback in a roadhouse at one point, which is basically like a glorified gas station. It's a gas station, it's a convenience store. They had accommodation, they had showers, they had, like a full service restaurant. So it was a little bit of everything. But yeah, I did some time working in the Outback at a roadhouse as well. So different visas do come with different kinds of work. But the cool thing is, I think, for people that are open to long-term experiences and that want to be abroad for an extended period of time, I think that those visas are a great way to fund your travels and keep yourself going for, up a couple of years if you want, really. And that's how I've managed to be away for about 7 years, just, kind of working as I go, just on different visas and things like that. So there are some great opportunities out there.
Yeah, I'm no longer in my 20s, but I know that that's such a dream for people. I was just a backpacker, so I didn't find those opportunities, but I had met many people while I was staying in hostels throughout my journey who were doing things like woofing and who were on working visas. And it is such a good way to be able to see the world and travel. And like you said, and also make money at the same time. I know if you've worked some interesting jobs, and you just said one of them was the Outback, or what are some other interesting ones you've heard of? Even here in the States, I know it wasn't a working visa that you're on, but last year when I met you, you were working up high in the mountains somewhere.
Oh yeah, there's actually some really cool jobs here in the States that you can get. And I actually think that those are really great, like segue opportunities. So for people that, are based in the States and have an interest in traveling internationally, but maybe aren't sure how they'll feel about moving away from home for a longer period of time or something, I think seasonal work opportunities in the United States are actually some of the best ways to kind of like dip your toes in and see how you like living away from your family, living amongst other people that are kind of like-minded. And so that's actually something I help people with now as well, is finding seasonal work opportunities and, starting out their travels with doing a job for a summer, for example, like I was last summer in Rocky Mountain National Park. And so I just went and I was doing back what I used to do prior to working in the travel industry. I was in retail management. So I worked in store management, but I basically took a retail manager job in Rocky Mountain National Park last summer. And for 6 months, I had my accommodation paid, my meals were covered, my transportation to and from work was covered. And so basically anything that I earned from the job was purely pocketed. And then that money, again, I used that to help get me to Spain for my master's program. So it's kind of this cycle of, earning money in new travel experiences and new jobs, and then taking that money to go somewhere else and do something similar again. But yeah, seasonal opportunities, especially in the national parks around the US, are a great way to kind of get some trial experience with being away from home and, experiencing new environments with new people. And so they can be super fun.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I didn't really think about that, because as we talk about the opportunities, what are some other difficulties that working in other countries could bring, even from like a personal standpoint too? Like you mentioned being away from your family. Have you experienced any, or any of your clients that you help them work through?
So there are some difficulties that come with it, definitely. And I would say it's not for everyone, especially, years at a time. I think there's not a ton of people that want to be gone for extended periods of time. But I think what's nice is that nowadays, bearing in mind COVID and the prices at the moment are a bit extreme, but that has not been the norm previously. And I think in general, it was nice to be able to have the option to affordably fly home, in between visa options sometimes. So I'd spend a year in New Zealand and then I'd fly back to the States for 3 weeks, hang out with my family, catch up with friends. And then I'd fly back and I went to Australia, did a year there. And then I came home before I took my job in Cambodia. So, it's not super difficult these days to get to and from and to have a chance to reconnect with family and friends that are, based where you grew up kind of. But that being said, in talking about friends, I think that can be one of the difficult parts of being away for an extended period of time, because at this point, I did spend a large part of my later 20s, I would say, and into my early 30s, traveling and being away. So at this point, my group of friends are people all over the world, and they don't know each other necessarily. Sometimes it's one person from here, one person from there. And it feels strange to come home and be like, wow, I don't have that community that I've had at different points. Because at each point in those travels, I had a little community in those places. But to come back now and be ready to, at this point, I'm ready to stay in the States and kind of get set up here, because I want that community again. And I miss that community. And that's something I haven't had in all my travels that was consistent, because eventually your visa would end and you'd have to go somewhere else. And I was always happy to move around when those opportunities came up. But at the same time, it can be challenging if you're someone who really enjoys having a tight knit group all the time and needs that kind of constant support network. And I think understanding that you're going to make great friends, but then you're probably going to have to leave them at some point, and you're all going to have to go your separate ways. And, you can stay in touch and still be friends with these people and see them. But I think one of the hardest things now is realizing that they're all separate and they're all far away, and they don't even know each other. So it's not a group. It's, one relationship with this person who's there, one with that person who's there. And then, you still have these little pockets of friends. But I think that your social relationships are definitely a little bit different when you travel long term. So you kind of have to learn to navigate that. And, at any point, if you're not okay with it, then, it might be time to consider coming home and getting set up again for that kind of experience, if that's what you're looking for.
Yeah, I mean, we were chatting about my wedding planning before we hopped on this recording, and I made a comment on how my fiance, most of our wedding list is my fiance's and my mom's, because they have so many friends, and I don't have that many on there. It's because they all live around the world, because I spent the majority of my life I was just traveling. But there is such a benefit, because that all my friends in other countries, I was able to go visit them or stay with their family or something like that too. So it definitely covered some free accommodations
Yeah.
traveling. But I can totally understand, like, something like a wedding, I would love to have all of my friends together, but it's just not really possible when everyone's scattered around the globe.
Right.
Um, but when it comes to working with your travelers, your clients, how do you incorporate coaching into your services?
So coaching is actually a main part of my services. I, unlike some others in the Travel Coach Network, I was never a travel agent. I've never used a travel agent. I've never worked as a travel agent. So in many ways, my business is coaching. I do some consulting as well. I've had, sessions that I do one-on-one consulting with travel agents who are curious about certain regions of the world where I have a lot of experience, and they maybe are trying to develop itineraries or something of the sort. So I do consultations with travel agents, but also new tour operators who are kind of developing and setting things up. I've been contacted by a few to help develop their strategies moving forward. And so that's a small part of my business, but most of it is actually coaching purely. So I do one-to-one calls, but I also do, small group settings for groups of friends that are looking to do visas, and they all want to know the details of the different ones. I can take on small groups kind of on a case-by-case basis, but my coaching is purely kind of what I do. And a lot of the techniques that I use are kind of a workshopping style, if that makes sense. We kind of, most of it's been virtual, of course. So at this point, it's a lot of kind of screen sharing and walking them through some of the options that they have when they get abroad, and kind of practicing some of the things that can be tough when you're on the go for the first time, and particularly decision making and understanding how to choose your accommodation. And a lot of young Americans, young US travelers, they don't have experience with hostels yet, and they're kind of like, that's uncomfortable. How do I know which ones are good, and how do I choose, and how do I get my tax number set up? And so a lot of the stuff that I help people with is actually very specific kind of technical stuff. So very much things are kind of workshopped out through our sessions. And so I wouldn't say I use any fancy techniques like NLP or any of these other, kind of highly targeted areas. It's more tangible experience that my clients are looking for. And so a lot of times it's a matter of workshopping and just communication and simple, basic, basic assistance and coaching techniques.
Yeah, definitely. I can see why that would be really important, and why that takes up the bulk of your services as well. You've probably gotten this since you have a travel related business. Because you have a travel related business, friends, family, people online, they probably assume that you're a travel agent. What's the difference between a travel coach and a travel agent in your words?
In my words, honestly, the biggest difference is bookings, logistics, reservations, planning. I don't do any of that for my clients. And they're not coming to me looking for that either. I do have some people that naturally assume, of course, as you said, that I must be a travel agent, I must do that kind of thing, but I really don't. And again, like I said, I've never used a travel agent myself. And a large part of what that role looks like to me is, helping walk clients through, first talking to them and figuring out what it is that they want to do. And then the agent puts all that together and kind of packages it up for them. Whereas I've always done all of that myself. And that's what I focus on teaching my clients to do as well, because I think it helps to be able to be your own problem solver in those scenarios, especially if you're looking to be abroad for a year or more. I think it's important to know how to navigate all these things yourselves, all your bookings, all your, weird travel mishaps that come up, lost luggage or delayed flights or whatever. And so to be honest, I think it's best when you can kind of be your own problem solver and figure out all these things on your own. And I also think it's part of the journey. I think that's part of where we grow and develop as people and as travelers. And I think that that's an important skill set for people to have. And a lot of that you kind of grow and develop over time and in those experiences is something that can translate later in life that you can use, in your life, returning to the US or wherever else it may be. And kind of these are skills that are valuable across a whole line and list of things. So I think helping teach my clients to become kind of their own travel agent is a big part of the way I see it. And the difference that instead of hiring someone else to do your bookings and your reservations, you're learning to do them yourself.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Doing a lot of research over the years myself, because I focused a lot in the business travel space and in corporate wellness too, that I've come across so many studies that talked about the benefits of travel on your professional life. So learning new skills, navigation, and also as for yourself personally as well, building confidence, and building character. And from a personal standpoint, travel also introduces you or shows you your weaknesses, teaches you your strengths and everything as well. So that's something I believe that people should really be empowered to do too. And that's something that I know the travel industry, booking industry for so long has really taken control over, but I've always believed in giving some of that control back into the hands of the traveler themselves.
Absolutely. Yeah. And there's a lot of value and benefit that can come to that. And I think that that's all part of the great process that is, the experience of travel and everything that you gain from it. So I completely agree. Yeah.
I know over the last couple of years, this pandemic, and it's become out of it, there was the rise in the remote work industry or remote work in general. And that's really not going to go away. People aren't going to be like, oh, you know what? Don't really like the freedom lifestyle and traveling abroad. I want to go back to the workplace. I mean, some will, that's a generalization. Some will, but have you, with this change in company culture, in the work-life culture, have you seen an uptick in your business, in your audience of, seeking advice and help from you so that they can, reshape their lifestyle that they probably never thought they'd be able to do?
I have had a few people reaching out specifically asking about what are their options now that they are remote, where can they go? What can they do? What kinds of visas are open to them? And I think the cool thing is there are so many ways that whole industry has evolved. And to be honest, it had before COVID too, but I think COVID obviously accelerated that. And so now you have a number of amazing companies that kind of completely opened the doors to the world. And then especially a lot of different countries started creating these remote work visa options that didn't exist before. And so there's somewhere between 11 and 15 countries that I'm aware of that offer those kind of visas to remote workers. And they're actually very different from the 10 countries that I mentioned previously that have these working holiday visas. So there's actually some areas and regions that I've noticed are very much focused on trying to kind of create this remote work culture as part of their tourism. And that is quite separate from what I typically focus on with my clients. But that said, I have done some one-on-one consultations and some, development of kind of plans for someone who's looking to pursue certain ones of those. The Cayman Islands was one that I helped someone with recently, and I've never been to the Cayman Islands, but it just involved a little bit of research and trying to figure out what their options were. And I think ultimately they decided not to go. They were just kind of looking at that as an option. But it's interesting because it's a whole new world of travel and freedom and mobility that I think a lot of people kind of weren't expecting, but were really glad to have as an option. As one of the strange silver linings of COVID. And so, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of options out there, but I would say I'm still very much trying to focus on working holiday opportunities and those who are looking to seek work in other countries, as opposed to bring their work from the US elsewhere.
Right. Yeah, definitely. You've been a member of the travel coach certification program and you're a graduate of it. One of the earlier graduates too. What were some of your biggest takeaways, or what was a takeaway that you got from being in the program, or even just the Travel Coach Network?
Yeah, so I definitely heard, I was listening to a few of the recordings the other day, and I know that this is not the first time this has come up, but honestly, building community has been the biggest takeaway from the certification program. And I think, early on when I first started, it was an idea I already had, but not in the specific name of travel coaching as you've kind of labeled it and as you kind of helped create that. But initially I had gone to a coaching seminar in New Zealand. This was my third trip to New Zealand. At that point, I was trying to get a work visa to stay there and move there permanently. And I had heard about this coaching seminar that was happening in the city of Auckland. And it was like, just a free event. You sign up for a day. And of course there was a sales pitch involved, but I knew that. And I just said, I want to learn more about this. And the whole thing was basically, you take what you love, you take your passion and you package it up and you coach that, you teach that. And I was like, yeah, but I can't just teach travel. I can't coach travel. That travel coaching is not a thing, And so that's why I was so glad when I found the Travel Coach Network. But the certification program kind of helped me solidify some ideas that I had floating around, and I wasn't really sure how to kind of hone in on things and package something out of it. And to be honest, I went through the program a first time and I still had these ideas that were all over the place. But what really helped me was when I went back a second time and focused in on the specific modules that were targeting the areas that I was struggling most with. And it was in that second time that everything started to come together a little bit more. And in some cases, I did some of the exercises again, just to try and, and that was when I gave it that second round, it kind of helped funnel everything back into this more specific specify the ideas that I had that were all at that point feeling kind of loose and scattered. And so the big takeaway I would say was getting my ideas together and putting some organization behind something that I didn't have organized on my own, and again, building that community was absolutely huge. There's so many amazing people in the network, and it's been so fun to meet all of you and hear all your stories and also support each other in our journeys of building our businesses. That's been a big part of it for me. And I there's no way I would have made it to the point that I'm at now without the help and support of you, especially, but the whole network and all the people in it and everybody kind of being there to support one another and help out in all of our journeys. And it's been really cool.
Yeah, I know when we first started our chat today, I was like, it seems like we've known each other for so long, because the bonds that you do build within those in the network. And I know I'm like the owner of it, but there's this whole world of all of you that connect with one another and become friends and visit each other. And I know I hosted a group of you in Chicago last year, and that's what we were talking about. It seems like it was just yesterday. It was just so much fun, and all the changes in our lives too. But travel is something that really bonds people. But then when you can talk about travel and business and really bond, it's a really special thing. And I'm just like, I know you guys all get a lot of things out of the TCN, but like, I don't even know how to express the gratitude that I have for all of you, because you all are like these individual, like ideal, like little people, my friends, like I don't even know how to say it, like my own little like superheroes. Like I feel like each and every one of you guys like are just so inspiring. And I feel like I've known everyone for so long. And I think that takes, to be able to get to that place is not easy, how many programs you've been in, communities you've been in, stuff like that. But like, there's just something about, members in the TCN who just are just incredible human beings, even just as from a friend standpoint as well too.
Yeah.
But as we wrap it up here, do you have a fun fact about yourself that you can share with the audience?
Yeah. So sometimes people hear me drop this into different, bits of media or podcasts that I've done before, but I actually really love adventure activities, but particularly adrenaline focused ones. So I've been skydiving 4 times in 4 different countries. And I've been bungee jumping twice so far in 2 different countries, and I've done canyon jumping in a completely different place. So I really like seeking out adventure activities when I travel, and it's one of those things that I budget for, especially like I leave room to do something extreme that might cost a little bit of money, but whether it's, I don't know, the bungee jumping, the skydiving, the hot air ballooning, the dirt biking, the whatever it is, I'm like, sign me up. I'll be there. Let's do this. And I hope to keep that going whenever I whenever I'm moving around again next.
Oh my gosh. I know I'm an adventurer, but I definitely would I haven't done any of that stuff, but I would much rather go skydiving than bungee jump. I don't think I
Yeah.
can ever trust a rubber band. Um, but that's just me. I know a lot of people do, especially in New Zealand. Did you do in New Zealand? I know they have like that really popular bridge that they
Yeah.
jump off of. It looks horrific. I'm just
Oh
terrified
man.
of
It's
heights. So
it's pretty impressive though. They've got it down. Like you feel safe there. You feel very
oh
much
no,
is in
no, you're
control.
not
Like
gonna feel
they know
safe
what they're
when you're
doing. I
standing up
actually, you
off
know
a
what,
cliff.
here's a segue from that fun fact. One of the jobs I was offered in New Zealand was to work for the bungee jumping company. Cause when I got there, that was one of the first things I did. And I was like, I would love to work for these people. How fun would that be? And for me, travel was so much about like exploring yourself and trying new things and something totally out there. And I was like, oh, work for the bungee jumping company. Like I'm going to do that. And I totally forget that sometimes, but they offered me a job. And it would have been fun, but I ended up working as a store manager for Billabong instead because it was more consistent and the salary was better and it was more in line with what I've been doing. But I was like, man, I could have got like free bungee jumps. It would have been great. And it would have been an experience, but ultimately I made the right choice for the time. But
Sure, your parents were glad that you decided Billabong over bungee
yeah,
jumping.
they were also glad I always told them about these things after I did them, never before I did
Yeah,
them.
I'm sure. Is there an adrenaline adventure that is on your bucket list still, or something you've heard of or seen and just haven't done yet?
Well, yeah, but not necessarily travel related, but there's two things I want to do. I really do want to get my skydiving license. I want to be able to jump solo because at this point
Mm.
I've done 4 tandem jumps, and it's a bit different when you have somebody double your size strapped to your back, jumping with you out of the plane. And I'd love to be able to jump solo one day. So I'd love to get my skydiving license. And I also really want to get my motorcycle license. So that's what I'm going to try and do here in the States, I think sometime soon.
I was your mother. I would
Yeah.
absolutely no, you cannot get your motorcycle license. But at least those skills came to handy if you drive the motorcycle, especially in Southeast Asia. I could never get the handle or like get the grip of driving a motorbike, and I know everyone travels that way. It's
No.
probably best that I didn't. But I know a lot of people, use motorbikes in other countries.
Yeah.
Um, please tell the audience how they can learn more about Unwrap Your Map and follow you, learn more about what you're doing, connect with you.
Yeah, so I'm on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, and in every single one of those, the handle is at Unwrap Your Map. And then you can connect with me on LinkedIn as well, Geneva Lutomski. And then unwrapyourmap.com is my website, which I need to make some adjustments to, but it's live. It's been up for about 2 years, and I built it myself. That was a fun part of the learning new things and setting up your business. But yeah, feel free to connect on Instagram as a priority, and then unwrapyourmap.com.
Yeah, I mean, websites are always evolving as your business evolves, so that's no biggie at all. And thank you so much for joining us. I'm going to drop all of Geneva's links there to connect with her and her website in the show notes. But Geneva, I want to thank you so much for joining us. It was a really fun conversation with you.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, and so if everyone wants to join or follow us on the Travel Coach Network on Instagram or the travelcoachnetwork.com, or grab your free beginner's guide to travel coaching, those are also in the show notes, along with we welcome you into our Facebook TCN Global Community. That also is in the show notes. And if you know anyone who's interested in becoming a travel coach or learning more about travel coaching, be sure to send them our way on our podcast. We truly appreciate it. And until next time, my fellow wanderers, bye for now.